one piece or one sandwich or one steak wasn't enough, you needed more? Well, that's what we had Wednesday. And I asked y'all to be praying because I really wanted to eat this one more time. And the Lord has granted me the privilege of preaching a message that He gave to me, and we preached Wednesday night, and I talked to the Lord. I said, Lord, are you sure? I mean, I don't want to do this just because I want to do it. I want to know that this is what you want to do, and, you know, I've already preached it to the people there, and he said, yeah, but only 75 of them will remember it. Hey, he said it, not me. So for those of you that wasn't here Wednesday, this will be brand new. For those of you that were here, we get to eat it one more time. And man, I tell you, I don't know about y'all, but I really got something from this. I want to speak to you today on the subject of the best is yet to come. Revelation chapter number 14. Revelation chapter number 14. I was really struggling about doing this, and Brother Tim Cox told me this morning. He said, anything true and good is worth repeating. I said, there you go. Revelation chapter 14 and verse number 13. This is a powerful verse. Listen to what is said here. This is John speaking. He said, and I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, write, blessed are the dead who die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors, and their works do follow them. Now, there's all kinds of good stuff packed in this verse. First of all, he tells us of our great enemy that we all dread, fear, and the greatest drive and will in any human being is to survive. And he says, when it comes to death, let me remind you, it's no longer your enemy. If you are a Christian, death is not your enemy. Jesus come out of the grave holding the keys to death, hell, and the grave. And now, like David, we can say, oh, death, where is thy victory? Oh, grave, where is thy sting? He said, for those who are in the Lord, if you're here this morning and you know you're saved, let me tell you what happens when you die. You get blessed. Boy, that changes everything, don't it? And if you're 45 and older, you know how much that means. Because he says, then you're going to rest from your labors. Rest from your labors. Now, there are some people that think as a preacher, you don't work much. You only work a couple days a week. Some of them may have even got a gift card this morning. I don't know, I'm just saying. And I said Wednesday night, and I'll say again, Andrew, for those that think a preacher don't work, I hope God calls you to preach. He said, for the Christian, when death comes, you're going to be blessed, and then you're going to get to rest from your labors. Then he goes on. And he said, the part I want us to look at the most this morning, it says, and then your works do follow you. Your works do follow you. Now, there's two ways to interpret what that verse is saying, and both of them are correct. The first way is that once you die as a Christian and you go to heaven and we stand before Christ, all that we've done, all that we have done is going to be laid on the table of judgment. And those things that are of wood, hay, and stubble will be consumed by the fire, and there will be nothing left. Those things that we've done that were righteous and right of God and the way God would have us will be gold, silver, and precious stones, and will endure the fire, and great will be thy reward. Your works do follow you for eternity. The second way to interpret this verse, is correct as well, is that your works follow you. What you do and how you live is going to follow you after you die. In other words, your life, whether it be a ripple or a tidal wave, is going to continue going after you're dead. Now, I told them Wednesday night, and most of you didn't hear it, so I'll repeat it. I'll get off that in a minute. Listen to this statement. Boy, this is so true. The greatest impact of your life most likely will be after you're dead. The greatest impact of your life will most likely be after you're dead. You see, when you die here, the works that you have created, the path that you have created, the things that you have done will continue to go out and out. And the further away from death you are, the wider that path is and greater the impact it's had. Let me give you an illustration to clarify what I'm saying. A few years ago, some sociologists, I got it. A few years ago, some sociologists decided to do a study on man's effects of life. They wanted to study how far these works do follow and what the impact was be. So they decided to pick two men living from the same era that were in total opposite walks of life. The first man was kind of chosen by statistical reasons. They were, just so happened, they were doing a DNA study in a New York State penitentiary, and they found 42 inmates that came from the same descendant. And they said, well, maybe this would be a good guy to study. So they began to do a genealogical study on a man by the name of Max Jukes. Now, if you listen to any of the people that knew Max Jukes and had written about him or comments that had been made, he was explained in this way. He was nothing but a shyster, a drunkard, a scam artist, evil. In fact, there was times that they discovered that Max Jukes tried to change his name just in order to try to stay in front of the law. When they began to study Max Jukes' family tree, here's what they found. No less than 7 of his direct descendants had been convicted of first-degree murder. 50 of his direct descendants lived out their life in mental institutions. 160 of his direct descendants were convicted criminals spending time in penitentiaries. 190 of his descendants had become prostitutes. 310 of his descendants had found no viable trade whatsoever and spent their life as paupers and beggars. 440 were listed as alcoholics and drug addicts. Of the 1,200 descendants that they discovered, 300 of them died prematurely. Only 20 had ever discovered a skillful trade, to which 10 of those 20 had learned it while being incarcerated. Less than 200 of Max Jukes' descendants finished high school. Less than 200. And 0 attended college. Max Jukes' works did follow him. They then went to another gentleman that was on the other end of the spectrum, living during the same time as Max Jukes. This was a well-known preacher, a man by the name of Jonathan Edwards. Now, if you know any of America's Christian history, you know that Jonathan Edwards was the man. He is revered as the greatest theologian to ever come from the Americas. He was a third-generation preacher. His preaching was often referred to as the spark that created the American Revolution. He was a renowned scholar. He attended Yale University at the age of 13. He became the president of Princeton University. And in his memoirs, he wrote, "Every night, ever so tired or weary from the day's journeys, I would spend 1 hour a night talking with my children. To which at the end of the hour, I would take one at a time into a room and pray a blessing over their life." He had 11 children. Spent some time praying over his children. When they began to follow the family tree, the descendants of Jonathan Edwards, here's what they discovered about his works. 285 of his descendants were college graduates. 100 of his descendants were pastors, evangelists, or missionaries. 100 of his descendants had become lawyers. 80 of his descendants had been elected to public service jobs. 75 of his descendants had become military officers. 65 of his descendants were college professors. 60 of his descendants had become medical doctors. 30 of his descendants had become federal judges. 13 of his descendants had become college professors. They found in his family tree that there were 3 mayors, 3 governors, 3 U.S. senators, 1 dean of the medical schools of the United States, and 1 United States vice president. Jonathan Edwards' works did follow. I want you to understand very clearly this morning this undeniable truth. It's very possible the greatest impact of your life will happen after you're dead because your works do follow you. Whether they be good or whether they be bad, your works do follow you. I believe the truth of what these sociologists discovered, and really all they discovered is what God's Word had already told us. What they discovered is that which we already have known, and that is this: it matters how you live. It matters. It matters how you live. We all want, listen to me. You can't build a generation of children that are going to be standing upon firm moral ground unless you are first standing on moral ground as an example. Nothing has truer been said than actions speak louder than words. We cannot have a generation of children that are high in character and right with God and living the way God's Word says is right if we are not, in fact, living that way ourselves. It matters how you live. We cannot have a generation to come up behind us that have strong work ethic. I get so disturbed and bothered sometimes when we hear people say, "Oh, this generation today and their work ethic and this and that." Listen to me. Your works are following you. They're going to learn work ethic from us. They're going to learn godly character and godly morals from us. Our works do follow us. How do we ensure that we leave a generation following us? How do we ensure that your children and your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren are living the lives, are living right and doing what is right unto God? I believe that all of this can simply be changed and turned around if we would hold to one single verse found in the Bible. In the book of Colossians, chapter number 3, I want to read to you what this verse says. And whatever you do, do it heartily as unto the Lord, and not unto men. I'm going to tell you, whatever work ethic I have, whatever character I have, whatever morals I have found, I can assure you I have witnessed those things in my father. I can remember going to my dad, and he was always about mowing the neighbors' yards and pulling weeds out of their flower beds and hauling their trash off for them. And I can remember asking him, Dad, why do you go through all that trouble for your neighbor? And he said, oh, I'm not doing it for them. I'm doing it as unto the Lord. He said, when I mow my neighbor's yard, I'm not mowing their yard. I'm getting to mow the yard of Jesus himself, because all that I do heartily as unto the Lord, not unto men. We need to remember that it matters how we live. Listen, your children's future is hanging in the balance based upon how you live. Your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, untold born hundreds of people's future is hanging in the balance based upon how your works are going to follow you and what kind of person you have become. It matters. We better get this in our head if we want to see a change in America, if we want to see a change in Kentucky, if we want to see a change in Marshall County, if we want to see a change in the world, then we better leave here with a renewed spirit of knowing it matters how I live. It matters because your works do follow you. It doesn't just matter how we live. It matters how we speak. You see, how we speak, it displays, it demonstrates what is truly inside us. Do you understand that? Here's what God's Word says. Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. In other words, what comes out of your mouth is really what's inside your heart. It matters what you speak. It matters whether or not you walk around speaking words that are right of God or wrong of God. In fact, Jesus himself explained it this way. No well can bring forth good water and bitter water. There's no such thing. There's no such thing, Bubba. When y'all do a water sample, it's either good or bad. It ain't, well, this side of the glass was good and this side of the glass was bad. It's either good or bad. And that's what Jesus said about what comes out of our mouth. It's either good or bad. There's no in between. It matters what we speak, whether or not we're speaking words of love or of hatred. It matters what we speak, whether we're speaking words that lift up or words that tear down. It matters what we speak, whether or not they are words of encouragement or words of discouragement. I'm going to tell you right now, the words that come out of your mouth will either make or break your children. We might ought to do a real quick inventory of how do we speak. How do we speak? I read a story one time that they done a study over in Russia. They went to an orphanage and they found an orphanage with 100 babies. And they split those babies into 50s. 50 went to this building, 50 went to this building. The 50 that went over here, they sent a nurse to take care of every single baby. And they would go in and they would hold that baby. And they would speak to that baby, and they would sing to that baby, and they would nurture and love and comfort and cuddle and nurse and take care of that baby. And all 50 of those babies grew up healthy and great. The other 50, they sent to a room, and each baby had its own crib, and they only sent a handful of nurses to take care of them. And they were instructed not to speak to the babies, not to cuddle the babies, to just simply walk from cradle to cradle, holding a bottle, and letting them feed. And what they discovered was that just from the lack of love being given through words, that of that 50, a high percentage of them died. Of the rest, a high percentage was increased in all kinds of physical and mental illnesses that affected them the rest of their life. And they discovered this, that of all the things that the human body needs, it needs affection and words of love. I'm going to tell you, it matters what and how you speak. It matters. And let me remind you what's hanging in the balance of the words that we speak. What's hanging in the balance is the untold hundreds that will follow your family tree, and the words that you leave can either be a pathway of destruction or a pathway of blessings. And it begins with how you live and how you speak. It also matters where you go. It matters how you live, it matters what you speak, and it matters where you go. I want you to listen to this closely. More times than not, your family will end up right where you've led them. More times than not, your family is going to end up just exactly where you've led them. Now, I know there's exceptions to every rule. Every family's got one. We call ours Tim. Everybody's got that uncle that you hope don't show up to the family reunion, or the cousin that you hope don't find your new cell phone number. We've all got them. But as a general rule, you can count on this. Your family tree will end up right where you have led them. So let me ask you a question. Where are you leading them? Well, Brother Jeremy, I'm at church. Okay, that's great. Where were you Friday night? Where are you Monday? Where are you Thursday? Where are you Wednesday? Thank you, Brother Tim. That one's on him. He gets credit for that one. Because they're going to end up right where you're leading them. And make no mistake about it, that which you spend time in is what they know you love the most. And that's where you're leading them. I'm going to take it a step further. You ready for this? You didn't get this Wednesday night. This is a new one. If you think coming to church on Sunday morning for an hour is leading your family where they need to go, you are woefully mistaken. 178 hours a week. We only meet here 2 hours. Most of you won. Now I'm done. I had one more. So you tell me, does your kids see that as a priority? Or is that just something you do once a night, 1 hour a week? You see, where you go is determined by what's important to you. Where you go is where you go to in your mind when you're dealing with problems and troubles. Where you go is where you're leading your family in a general direction toward God or away from God. I want you to listen to me closely. The greatest impact of your life will most likely be when you're dead. Do you realize that this verse is saying that when you die, you rest from your labors? In other words, when you die, there's nothing else you can do to lead your family where they need to be. Therefore, if you want your family legacy to be right, to be blessed, then you better leave here today saying this: it matters every day how I live. It matters every breath how I speak. And it matters every moment where I go. Because your works are going to follow you. Would you stand with me, heads bowed and eyes closed?